Welcome everyone, my name is Janet and I am working through the King James's Bible. Today I am in the book of Leviticus and I'm working through chapters 14 to 15 today. Now these chapters really in this book, it's all about the law and it's about how the Israelites are able to abide with God. So God is giving the regulations to Moses and Aaron, and we've covered a lot of details so far, and in chapters 14 and 15 we are just covering more of these regulations. So with 14, I'm going to give you some of the information that's involved there. It's not in the exact order of these rituals because it's so detailed and it takes forever to get it exactly right. So I've posted links under this video, so if you want to know exactly how everything took place, read through them. I'm just going to give you basically the details that are in there and then make of it what you will. Okay, so in part 1, we're covering, in chapter 14, part 1, we are covering the regulations for a diseased person at the time of their ceremonial cleansing when they are brought before the priest. That's what the first part is. So there's a lot involved in this, and obviously they have to go into the tabernacle to be cleansed fully and be atoned for what has happened. So the cleansing process goes through this kind of where they have to shave off all of their hair. They've got to cleanse themselves with water. The sacrifice part, they're using 2 birds. One bird is killed and the other bird is set free once the person is declared cleansed, clean. The bird is set free to go and fly in a field. The Lord also uses during this ritual some other things such as cedar wood, scarlet yarn and hyssop. They are part of the ritual for the ceremonial cleansing. Now, as part of the atonement process, it happens on the 8th day. There's a lot of 7s I've noticed in the Bible, like God made earth, and all of the things on it, and he rested on the 7th day. Now, the 7th day seems to be that time when things are rested, it ends, and then on the 8th day is when they must come and go through the sacrifice. So they are to bring 2 lambs for the sacrifice. One is for a sin offering and the other is for a burnt offering. They also have to bring a grain offering here, and so they go through a ritual and there's a lot of blood and oil, and blood has to be placed on the right ear, the right thumb and the right toe along with the oil, and so they go through all this process, and at the end of it the person is atoned, whoever had the leprosy. That is when they are fully cleansed. Now in the second part of chapter 14, we go into the regulations of cleansing from molds if they're in a house. So the Lord is giving Moses details about when they get to Canaan, the land there, when they'll be living in houses, what they'll have to deal with would be mold. So he gives details of basically how that is to be dealt with. So whoever is the homeowner, if they spot anything greenish, reddish kind of colours, then they have to go to the priest and get him to come and examine it. But before the priest gets to the house, they have to empty it of everything to stop everything being pronounced unclean. So get all the things out of it. Then he goes in, he decides, right, let's shut up shop if he sees, and they've got to close the house for 7 days. They come back, if the house is got more and more mold, then they have to kind of get rid of the stones that have the mold on it and scrape everything and then get rid of those and put those into an unclean area away from their town, basically. If the mold doesn't come back and it's plastered, then they can pronounce it clean, and then it would have to go through a purification process. And again, there's a sacrifice of 2 birds, very similar to what we talked about. One is killed, one is freed, and that is for the atonement of the house. Now, if the house, say, they look at it and the mold still is there and it's getting worse, then the whole house has to be torn down and it's classed as unclean, and they've got to take everything within the house and basically put it to a place where it's unclean, as long as it's away from their town. And just the last part is, if anybody's been living in the house, that kind of thing, they've got to wash themselves and they are classed as unclean until the next day. So that's kind of the regulations for skin diseases and for molds. So that takes us through chapter 14. Now we move on to chapter 15, where the Lord is talking again to Moses and Aaron, and he's telling them to tell the Israelites about anyone with an unusual bodily discharge, that they are unclean. So he goes through both male and female. If a man's semen discharges, then he is seen as unclean, and then it goes through this process. If anybody touches him at that point, they're unclean until the next day. He himself has to go through this ceremonial cleansing, which again is 7 days, not to go and touch anybody. Then on the 8th day, he's got to sacrifice 2 birds again. One is a sin offering, the other is a burnt offering, and that's how he gets the atonement. The second part is for the woman. During her monthly cycle, she is unclean for those 7 days of the period, and anybody who touches her again is seen unclean for that day until the evening. She has to again go through that 7-day process for the cleansing, and she has to sacrifice 2 birds for her atonement, a sin offering and a burnt offering. Now, if a man has sexual relations with this woman who is on her period, then he is classed as unclean, and he has to go through that 7-day period and then go through the sacrifice again with the sin offering and the burnt offering with the 2 birds. So these are the regulations for a man with a discharge and a woman on her monthly period. And also a man who has sexual relations with a woman is seen as unclean. So there you have it, 2 very unusual chapters. Again, regulations, sacrifices, all of these things that going into this Leviticus book. It's a really dark book for me personally, but take of it what you will. That's the information. Links are under this video if you want more details, and I'll leave you with that. Be back tomorrow for more strange uncoverings. See you then. Thanks. Bye.